Morning. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of your breakfast show Leadership Television Inside Nigeria. My name is Winifred Ubebo and today is 17th of June 2025. In this first half of the program, we are looking at newspaper review of some selected national newspaper, including Nigeria's most influential leadership. As we normally do on the program, we like to flag off with leadership's leading stories. Let's go there. Leadership has to cover wraparound this morning. But however, let's go to the one with cover stories. It says 12 years after privatization, power sector bleeds despite 15 trillion naira interventions. The story continues on page 8 of Leadership. 12 years after privatization, power sector bleeds despite 15 trillion naira interventions. Experts demand probe as ex-minister admits compromise in sales of Genco's discos. Gencos are generating their companies and discos are distribution companies. Blame infrastructural deficit, liquidity crisis, poor oversight, others as being of sector. These are kickers to the leading story on today's Leadership main cover story. 12 years after privatization, power sector bleeds despite 15 trillion naira interventions. Still on Leadership newspaper, defamation case, judge declines to order Senator Akpoti Uduaghan's arrest. The story runs on page 14 of Leadership. Defamation case, judge declines to order Senator Akpoti Uduaghan's arrest. Nigeria's inflation rate dropped to 22.97% in May. That is Cherry News. Nigeria's inflation rate dropped to 22.97% in May. 753 duplexes. Emefiele pleads not guilty as court grants SCBN governor bail. Boy 10 shoots police inspector father dead in Anambra. The story is on page 8 of Leadership. Boy 10 shoots police inspector father dead in Anambra. And we move towards, of course, let's just take the picture on the cover of Leadership today. We have the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, FCT Minister Nyesom Wike, Minister of Estate, FCT Mahmood Maria, and APC National Chairman Abdullahi Ganduje during the official commissioning of Greater Abuja Water Supply Network Loops 1, 2, 5, and 6 of FCC Abuja yesterday. There you have the picture of the president cutting the cake. The tape, sorry. Moving ahead towards the masthead of Leadership, prosecutes Benue killers now. Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, ACF, Arewa Consultative Forum tell federal government. The story continues on page 17 of Leadership. Prosecute Benue killers now. CAN, ACF tell federal government. And on the business boss of Leadership, Israel-Iran tensions threaten FDI. Portfolio inflows to Nigeria, orders. Let's take some excerpts from that business story. The escalating conflict between Israel and Iran is raising concerns among economic stakeholders that Nigeria could experience a decline in foreign direct investments, that is FDI, and portfolio inflows. According to the Nigerian Exchange Domestic and Foreign Portfolios Participation in Equity Trading Report, foreign transactions dropped sharply by 90.99% from 699.89 billion naira in March 2025 to 63.07 billion naira in April. A recent report by SBM Intelligence titled "The Escalating Iran-Israel Conflict and Its Implications for West Africa" warns that the growing military tension between the two Middle Eastern nations is not only threatening global security, but also destabilizing the international economy. The story continues on page 10 of Leadership newspaper. Israel-Iran tensions threaten FDI, portfolio inflows to Nigeria, orders. And that takes us to the stories about the masthead of Leadership. Killings, Tinubu visits Benue tomorrow. Killings, Tinubu visits Benue tomorrow. While FCCPC summons air peace over alleged ticket refund violations. That story continues on page 23 of Leadership newspaper. From there, we move towards inside the page of Leadership to our page, our stand, and that is on page 3 of Leadership newspaper. And today's stand is on time to end the bloodletting in Benue. Once again, Benue State has been plunged into mourning In what can only be described as a coordinated onslaught on defenseless communities, gunmen widely believed to be armed herders launched fresh attacks on Jeleweta and Dauda communities in Guma local government area, leaving more than 100 people feared dead, with dozens more injured, displaced or missing. 48 hours earlier, 25 people had been killed in two other communities in Makurdi local government area. From all available accounts, these were not random acts of violence. They were cold-blooded, calculated massacres executed with impunity. We'll go towards the conclusion where the paper takes a stand. It said the federal government, for its part, must initiate a national dialogue around the matter and, if necessary, harmonize laws that preserve communal rights to land while addressing the concerns of nomadic populations in a manner that ensures peace, not bloodshed. As a newspaper, we join the people of Benue in mourning and call for immediate action, not speeches. The time has come to break the cycle of violence and impunity. Nigeria cannot afford to normalize mass killings, and no state should be allowed to bleed endlessly while the rest of the country looks away. It is time to end the bloodletting in Benue. The federal and state governments must commit all resources necessary to achieve peace and stability in the state. Essence from today's stand in leadership, time to end the bloodletting in Benue State. From our stand, we move towards the back page of the paper where we have Tuesday column with Abdurrauf Aliyu. Abdurrauf Aliyu's column today is on Sule Lamido, a tribute to Sule Lamido. It says, a life marked by truth and service. Sule Lamido, a life marked by truth and service. We just take a quote from that column. Despite the challenges and periodic betrayals, Lamido's loyalty to the PDP remains unshaken. He has refused to defect or abandon the party, choosing instead to confront its challenges head on. Quote from today's tribute to Sule Lamido, a life marked by truth and service, Tuesday column with Abdurrauf Aliyu. But before we leave the back page, we mustn't fail to visit Ghana Must Go. The news on Ghana Must Go says man arrested for raping stepdaughter. And Ghana Must Go replied, he should be castrated. And of course, it's something I second. For continuation of those stories on leadership today, don't forget to head up to the website to read more on the stories on www.leadership.ng. Moving ahead, we report at The Guardian newspaper. The Guardian's leading story this Tuesday says, CDS links military sabotage to Benue massacre ahead of Tinubu's visit. This is in response to leadership story today that President Tinubu is scheduled to visit Benue. And on the cover story on The Guardian says CDS, that is Chief of Defense Staff, links military sabotage to Benue massacre ahead of Tinubu's visit. The story continues on page 6 of The Guardian. Of course, we have the pictures of the actors beneath the leading story. Picture of President Tinubu, the governor of the state, I sent earlier, the NSA Ribadu, Musa, Chief of Defense Staff, and the IGP Egbetoko beneath that leading story. Still on The Guardian, we have NMDPRA CEO traveled on official engagement, not under investigation. The news continues on page 7 of The Guardian. Pegason accuses government marketers of exploiting consumers. Damagun denies defection plans as Tinubu's S8 vows to plot his 2027 defeat. Declining food prices, stable forex reduced inflation to 22.97% in May. Of course, we also have the picture of the outgoing AFDB president, that is African Development Bank, Dr. Akuyumi Adesina, with the Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan, and including former President Jakaya Kikwete during the tour of the 112.3 kilometer Dodoma Outer Ring Road project in Tanzania. Still on The Guardian newspaper, towards the masthead, Sokoto to negotiate with repentant bandits to end insecurity. Tanker drivers suspend loading over Lekki Ekpe e-call-up fee. The Guardian City Productions unveiled the Nigerian Summit 2025. What is on this note, we conclude review of front headline stories on The Guardian this Tuesday morning. Don't forget to log into the website of The Guardian for continuation of these leading stories. We move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is and that is the Vanguard newspaper. The Vanguard's leading story says bloodletting, Tinubu shifts Kaduna trip, heads for Benue. Leading story on today's Vanguard newspaper, bloodletting, Tinubu shifts Kaduna trip, heads for Benue. And above that, the masthead of Vanguard, Israel-Iran war, 330,000 flee Tehran, oil price drops 40%. Israel-Iran war, 330,000 flee Tehran, that is capital of Iran, oil price drops 4%. And that story continues on page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper. From Vanguard newspaper, we move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is THISDAY newspaper. THISDAY says Tinubu reschedules visit to Kaduna, heads to Benue tomorrow to calm names over persistent killings. The story runs on page 24 of THISDAY. Tinubu reschedules visit to Kaduna, heads to Benue tomorrow to calm names over persistent killings. That's the main headline story today on the THISDAY newspaper. For continuation of this headline story, don't forget to log into the website of THISDAY for continuation of these headline stories. Well, it's on that note we conclude the first half of today's Inside Nigeria, where we have newspaper review. Don't forget to stay tuned for the second half of the program, where discussions will continue. Don't go away. Stay tuned.
Be part of our brand. Leadership for God and country. Be part of our brand. Leadership for God and country.
Yes, welcome back. The program is Inside Nigeria, a breakfast from Leadership Television. And my name is Winifred Bebo. Once again, I have my Tuesday guest in the house. He's a public affairs analyst, Benedict Agunoye. Thank you so much. Good morning. Yes, we'll start off with leadership's leading story today. This Tuesday, it says 12 years after privatization, power sector bleeds despite 15 trillion naira interventions. Of course, Nigerians is abreast with all the proofs that has been ongoing in the power sector, as well as starting from return to this Fourth Republic of former President Olusegun Obasanjo, where so much money was invested in the power sector and nothing came out of it. And presently, one of the former ministers of power is still being tried for corruption charges. What is actually the matter in this power sector? Meanwhile, one of the writers said experts demand probe as ex-minister admits compromise in scenes of Jenko's discourse.
The case is very simple.
Yes.
You cannot reform a system that you are not informed about.
Cognizant.
So I think that the stepping out error for us started in the Obasanjo administration.
Yes.
Where you wanted to reform a system that you did not understand. And so what they simply did was to deform the system and spread the darkness. Certain things were working before they came. The data on ground were very clear. There is a huge gap between what was generated and what was being paid for. So that tells you that something is either wrong in the transmission line or something is wrong at the point of distribution or something is wrong at the marketing end. But what did we have? If you are claiming 80% line loss at the time, it means that 80% of what was generated was not distributed or was not paid for. So why invest more money in generation? He spends his 8 years trying to compare Nigerian generation with South Africa and this and that, and so we want to generate 10,000 megawatts. Whereas our installed generation capacity was not being utilized. So to a large extent, I think that from that point, we brought in a data, we brought in a system, we brought in a focus that does not align with the problem. And so we took off with generation without doing anything about transmission. And then the masses on their own were contributing money and buying generator for NEPA, or buying the transformers for NEPA. Then they move forward, we have what they call privatization. Now, GENCOs and DISCOs were created and given to people who have not demonstrated capacity to understand what the problem is and being able to run it. All they wanted is put your money, get some form of monopoly, and just be making money without doing things. Because otherwise, 12 years down the line, we should not have 6 million people or 6 million subscribers that are not metered. The metering gap is so wide, which is an evidence that nobody in the system was well concerned about bridging that inefficiency. Rather, they believe that without the meters, they can continue to get the people pay for darkness. And so if the people are paying for darkness, and those who can afford can continue to steal, then you do not expect the required development in the sector to happen. And I think on the other hand also, the states for me have responded too slowly. Now you have some form of liberalization. So we should be looking at mini grids, we should be looking at off grids, so that the national grid has lesser number of people to support, and then they can be efficient to support that level of people. While new grids are being developed to cover the small ASIAC spaces where they are. So that if you generate in Cross River, distribute in Cross River and maybe Akwa Ibom, if you generate in Benue, distribute in Benue and possibly Nasarawa, And then if you have excess, there can be a reserve where you could use that to help the national grid. But your first line of transmission and distribution should be within the geography of where you exist. And as much as possible, the villages should be put on what you call off-grid. Majority of them do not consume so much. And if you plan properly and calculate their grid requirement, there can be stand-alone from house to house that people can run with sustainably. And if that is where the loan and the funds are deployed, the efficiency and the effectiveness will be visible for a long time.
All right, thank you so much for that. Now, I want to intervene because a lot has been said about Nigerian's power sector, especially the what gave birth to our GENCOs and DISCOs. Like an ex-minister admits compromise in sales of GENCOs. Now, if an agreement has been signed, Benedict, why can't they look at the whole lot of the memorandum of understanding? And if make adjustments, because we cannot continue to lament the power sector as concerning GENCOs and DISCOs without doing anything about it.
You see, when there is so much inefficiency, right, you need to first of all take care of the inefficiency before you go to the negotiation table. Like I said, the law has permitted mini grids and off grids. Let's see the mini grids and the off grids. Take off all tertiary hospitals from the national grid. Take off all tertiary education from the national grid. Take off some cottage industries from the national grid. When you now sit down to negotiate, right, and there are not... It's constitutionally based, but there is a law that now permits them to be taken off. So let's act based on the new law first. Let's have the new normal. Then you can now go back to negotiate, right, what you have with the DISCO. But when you don't have an alternative, you need to have a better, there must be a better alternative to negotiated agreement. Our partner is off-grid and mini-grids. So let's go there. Let rural electrification do its job. Let rural electrification do its job. Allow the individuals or the other agencies that are responsible here and there for power to meet the need of the people. So when people have alternatives, right, and then you can sit down with DISCOs and GENCO and said, let us discuss. But if you don't do that, then they can continue to hold you to ransom. But if you are sure that our hospitals are not with them, the schools are not with them primarily, it means that for any DISCO to now sell to an hospital or to sell to a university, you will go in and renegotiate because they now have the capacity of, without you, we can survive, right? Not that you will go to a UCH and shut it down for 6 months without power. No, if a UCH has its own mini grid that is not powered by any DISCO, a DISCO that now wants to sell into the territory of UCH will need to sit down, and it will be a negotiated agreement based on what will be profitable to both parties. Not a case where you are making institutions pay for darkness.
All right, thank you so much. There's so much to discuss in this power sector, but there's no time for that. Let's move ahead. And we are looking at FCCPC summons LPs over alleged ticket refund violations. This is on the backdrop of what played out last week. We saw a trending video of the senator, former governor of Edo State, Adams Oshomole, of course, trying to block some, make demonstrations actually at the airport over his botched flight. And Nigerians have been speaking because recently the federal government set up committee probe to look into what actually happened. Now we are having, while many are taking side with the senator, many are saying that the airlines, Nigerian airlines, are not helping matters, given the innumerable times they have to cancel flights just without any reasons, and most cancel flights or delay flights, which has become the norm in Nigeria's aviation sector. How do you react to that?
Well, I think that the regulators in the Nigerian aviation space need to sit up. When you get into an airport and within the space work of 3 hours, no flight has taken off, and rather you've had announcement upon announcement of more than 20 cancellation or postponement. But you are not going to see any official of the government, whether FAN or NCA or whoever is supposed to be responsible at that instant, okay, to come and say, look, this is what is on ground. We are sorry, or this is what should be done. Now, I've seen flight reschedule in other climes, and I know what happens. When flights get rescheduled, somebody is possibly promising you a lunch or even giving you a ticket. Something is being done. Something is being done. But in the Nigerian space, you are there for 5 hours. No apology, nothing. And eventually, if you decide to even buy another ticket, you are sure that the day you decide to use that ticket, they would want you to pay more. Now, they are the one who cancel the flight, who should pay compensation, but they don't. So I think that within the paid work, the regulation is not working for everybody. So the regulators need to work for us. Okay, you say, I'm late by 10 minutes, I have to pay fine. When you delay me for 10 minutes, you should also pay fine. No, that's what if I can pay for coming late, then you should pay for every flight delay. I think that until that is done, then the system is not fair to all. Now you are caging people because they came late, but you are still selling tickets. So I think there should be an investigation, perhaps by the National Assembly Committee on Aviation. After that, you have stopped people who booked from checking in. The new tickets, you are not supposed to sell any new ticket, because the same check-in procedure that those people require to board the plane is what the people you have disqualified require. So for every new ticket sold, after that the check-in counter has been closed and moved with that flight, there should be a fine on every airline. When you do that within the Nigerian space, I think this hurry of we are closing the gate and then you are marching people to the tarmac.
Or just cancelling flights outright. You can't do
what I'm even saying is like cancelling flight, there should be sanction for that, and there should be compensation. But again, when it also comes to you have closed the gate, you should not sell any new ticket on that flight. If it is discovered that tickets are sold,
why you close the gate?
Why the gate is closed between the government and the airline, there should be a terms of settlement. The airline should pay fines, because you have closed the gate for security, for safety reasons, and for proper preparation. So any new ticket you sell is actually a distortion. It's a distortion to that process that requires closing of the gate, as far as normal morality is concerned. So for me, it's not a case of between airpeace and Comrade Adam Social Mole. It is a case of the regulators sitting up to do their job. You should not be a VIP or a VVIP to get attended to when your rights are violated. I've booked a 10 o'clock flight for Enugu, which should be like 45 minutes. And I'm sure that I didn't leave Abuja until 4 o'clock on a certain day. And nobody paid any compensation anywhere. Anywhere. And it is not just about airpeace. Most of the domestic airlines have issues with that. And if they all can have issue, then it tells you that there is a problem from the end of both NCA and FAN. NCA should be the principal regulator. FAN is the landlord for everybody. So both the tenants and the regulator, I think they are not doing well. The landlord is also there not doing anything. Because if there is any protest within the space of the airport and anything is destroyed, that will be property of FAN that is being damaged to an extent. So they should also be responsible to see that things are done the way they should be done. But I think as a nation, if we want aviation to move forward, we need to sit up and make sure that people are not cutting corners.
All right, thank you so much. We move away from there to talk security issues. Of course, the hotbed right now is Benue State and even Plateau State. Tinubu, on account of that, is scheduled to visit Benue tomorrow, and the IGP too is already in Benue for the bloodletting, to see an end to the bloodletting in Benue, which is also the editorial in today's Leadership newspaper. Now, however, a few days ago, President was quoted to have said that summoned earlier to MENT forces to have talks with the bandits or the warring people concerned and see how they can resolve the issue. It takes us back to the former president Muhammadu Buhari's time also, who also gave marching orders to Autumn to learn to live with his neighbors, in quote. What is happening?
Well, do we call the issue in Benue that of neighbors fighting?
That's how the former president called it.
I do not agree. Now, there is a difference between insurgency, communal clashes, and plain criminality.
Yes.
In this instance, I see this as more of plain criminality.
I agree.
Because if they are neighbors and they are fighting, if it's communal issue, there would have been points where they meet and agree or disagree. What do the bandits want? They are criminals and they should be treated as such. You can come with surprise attack and kill people at any rate. However, I think that one of the bottom line here is to actually sit down the service chiefs, the Chief of Defense Staff, the National Security Advisor. I think they should be apologizing to the nation for incompetency of their command.
They have taken over some of these communities.
Now, why am I saying that? In Benue, you have the tactical air base.
Yes.
One of the strongest base for the Air Force in Nigeria. You have what you call the headquarters annex of the Army Engineers and School. You have the Air Defense Airborne Brigade Battalion. There is the Zone 4 Police Headquarters and a lot of high-ranking security orders within the environment. Now, the Chief of Defense Staff has been there. The Chief of Army Staff has been there. The Police IG has been in and out. There is a sitting Police AIG in Makurdi. There is a sitting air officer commanding in Makurdi. The deputy commander also of the Army Engineers and School is there in Makurdi. Now, if within the vicinity, not too far from Makurdi, these kind of things are happening, it tells you that we are not securing our assets appropriately. And that's what it implies. So I think that to an extent, somebody should be apologizing to the people for failure of his men, rather than just grandstanding.
Benedict, if I may also intervene, like a report carried out yesterday by some of the residents of Benin said that most of these military formations, as you just pointed out, that the military there, they are more interested in guiding the cows, the animals, than the humans. How feasible is this?
You see, like I said, let's look at it this way. Whether it's cow or human, let's leave the politics out of it. That there was a movement of people that will lead to the death of over 100 or over 150 as confirmed by the governor. The governor has confirmed 151 dead and said there are still rescue going on, so there might still be more number. But as at yesterday afternoon, the governor has confirmed 151 dead. Now, what we need to look at is this has happened too frequently. That somebody should be able to put that at bay. It should not have happened. This last one should not have happened, given that the Chief of Army Staff was there only last week. So if this has continued, it means that something is possibly wrong with the rules of engagement on ground. So I think that the governor or the president moving in tomorrow as commander-in-chief of the armed forces and the president of the nation. So I think as president, he should address the political class. As commander-in-chief of the armed forces, he should be able to get the Chief of Air Staff, the Chief of Army Staff, the Police IG together and set a new rules of engagement that can bring peace to the land of Benue. On no account should anybody be killing anybody.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. Just before we go, the leading story today on The Guardian on security issue in Benue links military saboteurs to Benue massacre ahead of Tinubu's visit. So what is happening to intelligence report to fish out these saboteurs.
That's what I'm saying. On the part of security and defense, what we need is a new rule of engagement.
Right.
The president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The armed forces are present in Benue, and they are large enough, in my opinion, to do whatsoever needed to be done. So he should be giving them rules of engagement that is required to solve the problem on a permanent basis. It is good enough that the military presence in Benue is good. The security presence is good. So I believe that what they need is instructions. So you don't have to apply the rule that is obtainable elsewhere. The situation in Benue is now peculiar. The men in Benue are on ground. The commander-in-chief himself is going there. Then he should give them a new rule of engagement, agreed and taken care of. And if any slip happens going forward, then there should be consequence on the part of the commanders whose commands are found incompetent.
All right, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program, Benedict Agunloye. Thank you so much once again, and I look forward to having you spend time on this program. Well, viewers, this is where we'll draw the curtain on today's Inside Nigeria breakfast show on Leadership Television. My name is Winifred Bebo. Thanks for joining us. And so also don't forget to join us on this station for news on the hour. See you. Bye.
Be part of our brand. Leadership for God and country. Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last word, leadership.